Dave recently wrapped up its first season as the most popular comedy in FX Network's history. I'm contributing editor Riley Chow of Gold Derby here with rapper Lil Dicky, who made the show and now wants us to know him by his government name, Dave Burd. I assume that you're going to be using some of your existing music in the show, but I instead counted 8 original songs. So I first of all want to ask what the plan is, not for new music from you, but to release a soundtrack for the show.
Well, I don't know that there is a plan because yes, there's definitely original music, but there's not, and maybe there's 8, but it's like it's not really necessarily 8 full songs. Basically, what I didn't want to have happen was that I have so much work to do at all times with the show and with making my own album. And I don't want to necessarily have to fill out a soundtrack every year and like create. It's another. So there are original music pieces, but I don't think there's enough to like for it to be like a body of work. And I don't plan on like making more music for the show. And I also don't know what, like, you know, even though I am Lil Dicky in the show and the character is making music, I wouldn't necessarily put some of the stuff out as Lil. Like I have like a different bar and a different. You know, I've only put out 2 songs as Lil Dicky in the past 5-6 years. So it's like, I don't want to just put stuff out just to do it. So I kind of, long-winded answer is there's no plan for a soundtrack. I'm sorry. Just enjoy them in the show.
All right, I'll just keep streaming them on YouTube fan accounts then.
Yeah.
You've said that it's harder to write a song, but harder to execute an episode. So I want to ask specifically about how hard the songwriting is when it comes to freestyles, the ones that we hear in the show, especially the one at the Breakfast Club, because I imagine that the process differs in that you want it to sound off the cuff, but then it's also a narrative device that's the culmination of the season.
Yeah. I just think that's one of my strengths as a rapper is like writing these little like but like long verses that are like telling of a story that like still involve like, yeah, like you say, like there's thought behind them, and it's not just like me rapping. And there's like always kind of thought about like the gestures and like the space in which they're being delivered and all that. So it is a different art, but really it starts with just like writing lyrics, and the process isn't that different from like writing my own music, but it's like almost easier to not have to worry about like a hook. Or, you know, is this song like, where does it go? Is it for the radio? You know, it's like, it's just, sometimes it's good just to rap. And that's kind of what these are.
You mentioned this a little, how you sound a bit different in the show. And I feel like in the songs that you put out in more recent years, your music has a bit of a different sound and your voice sounds a bit different as well, a bit of a different hairstyle. Can you tell me about the kind of evolution of your sound for men like me?
Yeah, and it's like, it's still so like, I don't even think that, I know you don't because I haven't put any music out, but like people don't like, you know, I look back at a lot of my old music and I think it's bad. I think I've probably like personally, I mean, I think the thoughts are good behind it, and I think the lyrics are good and they're interesting creatively, but in terms of like just actually just sitting back and listening to like, this is like an objective piece of music, and like just I don't think that I was nearly the rapper that I am today. So it's just always, it's like a sport. The more you do it, the better you get. And I look back at my first stuff and I'm like, I don't even understand how I have like this, like fans. Like, how do people want to listen to this? It's terrible. And I'm sure I'll look back at the stuff that I'm saying is so good that I have, you know, on my computer upstairs, and I'll look back at that in 5 years and say it's like, I think everyone's just constantly evolving. But you know, I wasn't like, you know, music is not something that I was always doing my whole life. So it's kind of like really taking on a life of its own, and I'm just getting better and better. And it's just you're always going to keep finding your voice, not just like lyrically, but just like the way it sounds. And I can't wait for people to hear my new music because it's so much more elevated than I think people are even expecting.
Do you know what song or songs you're submitting to the Emmys for their Best Original Song category?
I believe it's, well, I know we're doing the theme song.
Yeah.
And then I assume maybe if there's a best original song, the jail song, we should, if we're not. I know the theme song we're submitting.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm gonna send a text right now about the jail. I'm gonna say, are we submitting that for best? Because there's a category, best original song.
Yeah, it's called Outstanding Original Music and Lyrics.
Are we submitting jail for best original?
I hope so.
Yeah, I'll get to the bottom of it. Okay.
All right. Now, the show is often called a White Atlanta, so I'm wondering if you've gotten any response from Donald Glover.
No, I've never. I haven't met the man yet. I'm excited to see him one day and talk to him, but no.
Okay. The show kind of underwent a critical reassessment throughout the season where some were initially dismissive of the dick jokes, but then it feels like we see less of them as the season goes on and it moves in a more heartfelt direction. So can you tell me about kind of hooking people with the more gross out comedy and developing the show into something else?
And that really wasn't like a strategy. Like it wasn't like I don't think we ever thought we're gonna not be so serious initially and then get more and more. I think it just kind of naturally unfolded that way. But like the other thing is like, it's easy to look at an episode like episode 3 as like this huge dick joke, but it's not. It's like actually really like me talking about like my biggest insecurities in life, and it's like not a dick joke at all. It's actually incredibly specific and for me like revealing. But I don't know. I wanted to make sure that episodes like made you feel things, and I didn't want to just make a comedy that was just all laughs and there's no like human depth to it. So I just wanted to. I think I constantly enforced that as we were writing, and it just ended up. I mean, I think you want things to build. The more things go on, the more you care about the characters, and the more like you can't have Gata's bipolar episode that happens in episode 5. You can't have that episode 2 because you don't care about Gata as much yet. You know what I mean? So you kind of always have to build up these characters to have these emotional payoffs work.
Now, you've talked about how certain experiences are true of you and also true of your character in the show, but I'm wondering kind of broadly more personality-based. What are the differences between you and this fictional version of you?
I think it's just like potentially like 1 degree further in terms of like, I mean, they're the same type of person, but I think like the on screen there's just like you'll do more for the sake of a joke, or you'll get in more trouble for the sake of advancing a plot. Like I really try not to do something like I don't like whenever like I feel like my character is, we were talking about doing something that I would just never do in real life. I'm pretty opposed to it. You know what I mean? But maybe like comments, it's like an example is like in episode 8, there's like record label meetings, and like, would I ever go on a record label and do a whole presentation like that? No, because it's like ridiculous. No, but if they say like to me in the actual real life, what do you think your upside is? I'm going to say I think I'm the next Kanye. Like I would say stuff like that. So it's like it's kind of just like rooted in my true beliefs, but just taken to a slightly hyperbolic place at times for the sake of comedy.
On maybe a related note, in the penultimate episode, there's a sequence where you reinvent diarrhea, but then in the trailer for the show overall, we actually see you fall into it, which is an extension of that scene. So I'm wondering why delete that section of it?
Wow, you're good, man. Well, it was, you have this was like an example of like me working with FX, and it's like first off, I would say like my biggest fear going into this was having to get feedback and really borderline adhere to the feedback of like a network of like other people who I don't even know these people. Like, why am I gonna base my TV show on like what they say? But it turns out the people that I work with, their opinions are so valid, and like they've done nothing but help the show. Like I really believe that FX's notes are usually accurate. And originally we shot like me falling into the pond, and even in the original edit there was even more diarrhea, and it was an even grosser scene, and it ended. But then we talked with FX, and they wanted less diarrhea, and it ended up being a compromise of like where it is, what you saw. But we just thought falling in the water would have potentially taken it to like just 1 degree too slapsticky and like maybe unbelievable of a place. So we didn't do it because we wanted to ground it more. And I think that was a good call in retrospect. I think oftentimes compromises are good.
So in the trailer for the episode, or sorry, not the trailer, in the actual episode, the following one, in the finale, it ends with you back at the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God and Angela Yee. You had been on there in 2015. I'm wondering what the conversation was to get them onto the show and kind of recreate a version of your first meeting.
Yeah, I just reached out to Charlamagne. I think I DM'd him. I DM'd him, I think, yeah. And I just explained that I'm making a TV show, and we really want me to go on the Breakfast Club, because there's like really like it's such a cultural landmark, and there's no better place for like, especially like a white rapper to like go like be tested, and we had done it in real life, and I think the outcome of that real life interview with Charlamagne and Angela at the Breakfast Club was them being like, I respect this guy. And I think that respect carried into when I asked them, and they were on board. So they did it. And I think they believed in me. And it was so nice because Charlamagne, he like likes me and he believes in me, but he doesn't know, he didn't know for sure that the show would be as good as it was. And I think, and he was such a fan. Like I remember we were talking about, he was watching the show and he was texting me about different episodes, and he like is such a fan of the show, independent of being on the show. And it was just so nice to see like how much he loved. He was posting about the show before he was even on it. You know what I mean? I'm just so happy he loves the show. And I think that last scene is like, couldn't have been done better. And I think that's a testament of Angela and Charlamagne and what they've built.
So while I have you, I want to ask you about another thing that's pre-Dave, which is about your biggest hit, Freaky Friday. And it's something that I wonder about with kind of a lot of artists that I idolize, and also something that people seem to be a bit more comfortable talking about these days, which is why collaborate with someone who, as you say in the song, has a controversial past. When being as successful as you are, you could maybe collaborate with somebody who doesn't have a controversial past.
You know what? I with Chris, there was an early experience in my career where like I was at this celebrity basketball game. And it was like before I was really even a celebrity. Like I don't even know how I got into this game. It was like very early in my career where I was like an internet rapper. And like I had nothing. Like I had no hits, not like absolutely nothing that was big. And I thought people weren't even gonna know who I was. And I was there early because I was so unknown at the time that my strategy was that this game I was gonna perform so well in and be so good that this was gonna be my big break. Literally that was my thought process. Like I gotta get there early so I can get shots up because then people will notice me because I'm good at that. Like that was how unknown I was. And I was there, and Chris Brown walked in, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's Chris Brown!" He literally walked right up to me, and he just started talking to me about how much he believed in me and how good of a rapper he thought I was, and it was so validating for me at the time because say whatever you want about Chris Brown, he's definitely like an icon in terms of a music maker, and him saying that was like a really what's the word, irreplaceable feeling that mattered to me. And I got his number, and at the end of the day, we have, as a society, one of two things we can do with Chris Brown is like we can choose to never listen to anything he does ever again, or we can allow him to use his talent for good. And when I watch Freaky Friday, I see a lot of people like laughing and happy, and I think that video has had a positive impact on the world in terms of just like making a lot of people laugh and happy. And I don't think it's something that anyone else could have just done. And I don't think you can just interchange pieces like that. I think Chris Brown made that video and song what it needed to be.
All right. Thanks for indulging me. Now, this is preemptive, but how do you feel about the prospect, which I'm actually predicting, that you'll be nominated for an Emmy before you get nominated for a Grammy?
I'm not surprised. That's not something that I would find surprising. It's definitely like I would love. I mean, the fact that we're even talking about either of them is pretty mind blowing. But I'm just thankful that that you're even asking that question. You know what I mean? So I'll take whatever I can get in terms of people caring about my art. So I don't care what order things happen in.
Do you know what episode or episodes you're submitting for the writing category from the first season?
Yes, episode 5, episode One in episode 9.
Okay. And why submit so many, and why submit those ones?
Well, I'm really just trusting the people around me. And so, for one, they say that your pilot sometimes is your best bet because that's the one that everyone's always seen. So that's why we went with 1. 5, like you said, I think people really gravitated towards that episode, and I think it's a really well-written episode, and I think it's one that stands out. And I feel that same way about 9. 9 is probably like my favorite. 9 and 10 are my favorite, and I think 10 is so musical-based that it might not, because the writing, I think people literally get scripts. Like, it felt like 10 might not have been the right one to submit. I don't know. I hope I'm not cannibalizing my options, but I think I'm just talking to my advisors. I mean, I don't know. I've never done this before, so I'm really just trusting people. And like when they say you can submit 3, I'm doing it. What do you think?
Oh, I would definitely go with just 1, not to cannibalize.
And are you saying that because you have knowledge about how this all works?
Well, your people obviously have a lot of knowledge.
Because if you go with 1, aren't you supposed to just go with the pilot?
Like I find that like Emmy voters, if they like the show, they'll vote for whichever episode of the show you submit. That's kind of my philosophy. Okay. But yeah, I've never had to submit anything myself.
Okay, well, I'll circle back. I mean, I understand that logic. It's just if you only submit 1, it's just like they always say the pilot. I feel like pilots win more than others.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's tough. I don't know.
Right. And finally, I want to ask, as you've been renewed for a 2nd season, and I'm wondering what you want to kind of leave in the 1st season, this being your first experience making a TV show.
I'm confused by the question. What do I want to leave?
Oh, sorry. I just mean, like, what are some kind of like lessons from making the 1st season of a show that maybe you don't want to do in season 2?
Got it. I haven't done that full, like I want to do like a full inventory and like go back and rewatch every episode and be like, this is my least favorite scene. This is my favorite scene. And like and try to understand why. Like I need to do all that. But I just think now I know my instincts are right. Even though I believe my instincts were right before, it's like you still, because it's your first time, you don't know, and like you're always constantly questioning, like, is this the right approach? And I just feel like now that inherent knowledge that I know what we're doing is the right thing. It's such a further along mental state to be in that will, just now instead of worrying, is this the right thing to do? It just becomes like, how can we take this already? We know it's the right thing to do, and how can we make it like so much better? And I think that's just a better approach. There's not like a ton of like regret I have that I look back and I'm like, I learned this lesson. Like there's not many of that. I think my lesson that I learned is that you can do it. And now that I have that valuable, knowledge, my concern now is not like, am I doing this right? Can I do this? It's just like, I know I'm doing it right. I know I can do it. Now, how can I do it better than it's ever been done?
And actually, do you have any tease for the 2nd season in terms of what we'll see?
Not really, but there's so many stories in my life that have happened or that I've thought about that we couldn't do in season 1 because I was like, my character just isn't like far along enough to where like in his career where we can even like do that. Like it wouldn't make logical sense. So it's like the amount of things that we can do we're just scratching the surface. Like I haven't even been a single man yet.
All right, Dave. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. We look forward to seeing that 2nd season. And to our viewers, you can check out other interviews with Emmy contenders on our YouTube channel and go to goldderby.com to make your own Emmy predictions.
Thanks, man. Be safe.